kick off with just a kind of a statement about Jean-Michel and how he was just so proud of his pilots, of his gliders, of the dealers that sold his equipment. He was just an intensely prideful man that when his pilots did well, it wasn't about Jean-Michel, it was about those pilots. I remember back when Howard Osterlin, one of the great pilots in the Bay Area, was competing on his Vision Eclipse and won a Nationals. Jean-Michel was so excited for Howard, for his accomplishments. I mean, he was proud of his gliders that he made, but having that win for him was not really about him, but it was about that pilot, Howard Osterlin, and really just was a great moment for him. And then the gliders that he produced for the schools that he really had that vision, thus the name, Vision, that these gliders that he was going to be producing were going to be really changing the industry, and I really believe that we've seen that.
Rather than building gliders for the competition pilots and people to go faster and faster and higher, he wouldn't build a new glider until it could go slower. His idea of performance for every model was 1 mile an hour slower. And he wasn't happy with that until he could do that. The Pulse is just, the culmination of everything he worked on. And 27 years later, after we stopped making it, he was still flying and still building it.
Jean-Michel gave me my first entry into the hang gliding business in the early 80s. And one of the things I remember, the letter that I got from him that I kept for the longest time, and I'm sure I have it somewhere. On the letterhead, it says Pacific Wingcraft, a labor of love.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and then he lived that. That was the interesting thing. It wasn't just a tagline. There was a labor of love there. It's one of the stories that occasionally I tell about Jean-Michel. He was so passionate, that French passion, and he had the same propensity to hyperbole than any of us would. But you'd find him several times in the same conversation saying, "This took 18 months to create this, 18 months of development, about this item. And then this item took 18 months of development." I used to make a joke that I bet his kids had an 18-month gestation. Everything was 18 months of development.
Well, he did have 2 children.
Oh, that's
So he did have 2 children.
That's 18
so
months.
Yeah. I think that's what he was referring to. His children, his gliders.
That's great.
Very passionate about it.
So one of the things that Ken said and GW just reinforced is, I met Jean-Michel a couple times, at Airwave, I think probably in the factory, but he was in one of those 18-month projects, But the legacy of a guy is a lot of who he surrounds himself with, and then how. I believe this guy talked through Ken Brown, talked through George Reeves, and what I got from that was always, I'm at Marina Beach, and I've just broken my glider, and I didn't have a glider to fly, and I'm like, oh, and Ken's like, oh no, just come fly this one. It's, hey, but I'm not ready to go. Well, no, that's okay, just come fly this one. So I flew, my first was a K5 that he built, that for first competition glider was awesome. Following Ken Brown at the Tennessee Tree Toppers, the best comp I had for decades, beyond. My longest flight in a hang glider to date is still on a 144 Classic out of Owens Valley. But just that mentality of, I just want you guys to fly. And I think it was official pink when people flew his stuff and went, wow, and either did well in competitions or had their longest flights. So the guy at the top just spoke through the George Reeves and the Ken Browns and
After he retired, he would occasionally drive past Marina Beach. And I swear he would just drive through. If nobody saw him, he wouldn't stop. But I swear he was just driving through just to check on us, make sure we're still all out there flying and stuff. He'd come home from France, go to Home Depot, buy stuff to fix the house, They come by, just check on us. We still fly? Okay. And then go on to where the rest of us doing. Yeah.
One of the things people don't know is he's the guy who really brought aero towing to the United States. So it developed in France with Lanouette. And I think it's 1982 or 83, I'm a little fuzzy on when. He embarked on a tour around the country with a Cosmos trike and an Eclipse hang glider with a double French connection on it. And we were one of the first stops somehow. I guess he went east and worked west, or whatever he did. Came to our shop, we were dealers. And I have notes just in case I go out of order here. And we get out, we secured an airport to do this stuff at. And we had only seen it on the cover of Hang Gliding magazine, like Gerard Trebinel had a cover shot at one point of a trike pulling 2 hang gliders on a Y string. And he arrives and he comes over to me and he's like, "You're a good pilot, you go first." Because he did and trailer and hook you up. You have to tell the stories with a French accent too. It's very important. Very important. And he goes, "You don't start running until you feel the boat pull you." No, dollars were decades later. This is foot launch
George's future.
on pavement. Yeah.
Oh.
Proto or Hips or what was the?
Proto, yeah.
Proto.
The release was the Chouinard things that are on the end of the current releases. But these were like things that could snap back in your face. But these are things they figured out later.
It'll probably go.
Gotta start somewhere.
Gotta start somewhere.
And then when you get to the air, you pull in and that lets me launch. And then you just follow me. So
How'd it go?
it went great actually, except it caught me off guard a little bit, the rapid climb out. And then, and he said, "If you get off course, I will catch you." So, but I would also try to catch him. And so we would pass each other a lot.
He sounds like a very accomplished tugboat.
He was new to it.
He actually sounds,
He was
like
lucky.
he's Latino, actually.
Well, my accent's drift, sorry. So then he goes, everybody got some rides on the end of the rope. And then at the end of the day, he asked me if I wanted to get a ride in the truck. I said, "Okay, why not?" And he puts me in the front seat. And he says, "Use the throttle, hold the bar out here and go." And I'm like, I thought I was getting a ride, but I was flying.
You flew?
Yeah, out of the box. Like he just, that was my instruction, and big long airport, which is fortuitous, and I was pretty good at landing where I needed to and stuff. So, long story short, we flew a couple times that night, and he says, "If you buy lenses, I will teach you how to fly, full course." And we were pretty much going to buy one anyway, my partner and myself, so yeah, we were going to buy one. So he gave me about 9 flights the next day, and that was the total package that we could pull off. And then he had me come around to like Connecticut, New Jersey, Morningside to be, a guy in the end of the rope that wasn't a test dummy. And then a remarkable thing that he did for us was these things were like $9,500 back in that time. And we could scratch up maybe 7 at the time. And he gave us a little $2,500 leeway to pay it whenever we could after the fact. And we got set up for aero towing and had a blast with that thing for the longest time. And
What year?
82, 83,
83. Yeah, because the whole Dragonfly stuff didn't start till like 90. So he was like the pioneer.
The
Price
trikes
were
were
people in
the
France.
The
Yeah.
trikes were the early, obviously.
It was a tremendous trike. It was
Yeah.
called the Cosmos.
It had a beefed up Atlas wing on it, I think is what it had.
They figured out to put the tow line through the hub of the prop, and the release was a vice grip. You know that? Connected to a cable, but the cable would pull the handle on the vice grip, and the vice grip would let go of the cable.
Yeah,
That's
through the prop.
Yeah.
Through the prop.
You don't have millions of dollars went into the R&D of a vice grip. And he just used it.
Yeah, it was used, used well.
So after the tour,
It probably took 18 months.
18 months. It was 18 months.
this is a deviation from just Jean-Michel, but it's a story that's too good not to tell. We went up to a place called Stormville Airport, upstate of New York, Livermore. And we get there, and he lets me take Dennis Pagan for a ride. And this is still, you know, like I had my 9 training flights on it. And we get set up, and Dennis is in the back seat, and I say, "What's that?" And there was a foot throttle and a hand throttle. And the hand throttle stayed where you put it. And we had never used a foot throttle ever. And he goes, "You can't use it. It's just a foot throttle." So, real windy day, we get ready to go. We go blasting down the runway. If you've ever flown a trike, they break ground pretty abruptly.
Dramatically.
So we just, and it's into a good wind, and we just go straight up, and I take my foot off the gas, which I had never had to, you know, that was never a problem, because the old throttle just stayed put. And we went straight up, and did this big swoop, and came out, and there was a structure that we just missed, and I didn't use foot throttle for a while. And that's the side story. And I'm done. But he was a visionary in realizing that aero towing was definitely, you know, a big part of the future of hang gliding. And Brett brought it over here.
He was very much.
I don't know why there was a delay. I mean, people dabbled in it, but
Yeah.
I don't know when the Bailey type really happened. But
It was the early 90s.
Early 90s.
so he was way ahead of his curve.
Well, Chris was one of his test pilots, so maybe.
Well, I wanted to talk about the Pulse again. Back in the, I guess, 80s, I was living in San Diego, and I became familiar with like Mark IV because GW and John Ryan were selling a bunch of them. But this was the early 90s. I moved back to the Bay Area, and he knew that I'd done some test flying for the HGV certification, and he had some new gliders. Was the Pulse, and it's still to this day an innovative glider. I mean, from the way the frame works, like the leading edges, there's 3 different sizes. So that the rear and the front section are the same in all the gliders, and he just varied the middle section. And he told me so that if you break the leading edge, you know, normally to ship a big tube is a lot of money, but you could ship a short tube, UPS, so it's easy. And I mean, just seeing out there today, the Pulse, you know, is still, I think, maybe flying better some of the newer liners. And that was, you know, it's that's 20, how many years ago? 27 or
27 years ago, Thomas developed it. Yeah,
It's hands down the most forgiving hang glider that there is.
Yeah,
Here's-
I was explaining
Forgiving.
to a couple people on the Dune the other day that when he, you know, nothing negative about anybody, other company I mentioned, but most hang gliding companies kind of design on a computer, or they take the current design to make it change, and then they go fly off a hill and fly away from the hill, or they fly off a mountain and do their testing and then make an adjustment. Jean-Michel designed and developed and refined the Pulse on a sand dune. There's no real surprise that it would do so well on a sand dune. You know, it's. I watched him, and I learned a lot about how it was done. You know, he had these cord-wise cuts with Velcro this wide on each side. He'd fly it, then he'd land it, un-Velcro it, pull it a little tighter, Velcro it back, and then take off again. You know, to make little adjustments to see how the handling would happen.
Yeah. And oftentimes when we were test flying the gliders for Jean-Michel, he didn't really need to hear from us what we thought of the glider. He wanted us to fly the glider so he could see it. And oftentimes the instruction was fly close, fly close. And you know, I want to see this, I want to see that. And you know, we give him input, but what he was really doing is looking at the wing and how it shaped and how it responded to the flying. So
He was watching everything from the way it rotated up to the way the trailing edge changed while it flew by him.
yeah.
Can't be doing ones that he's laying on the ground because we're on his very shallow slope. He's laying on the ground on the front road, and he's just so you can watch it as he goes by. You know, making notes.
No video or anything, it's just looking.
Just looking, yeah, just looking at it.
I mean, we did video for the HGV certification packages.
Oh, yeah.
We did most of it.
That's for people without the brain of Jean-Michel.
Yeah, but I was proud of the time when I was certified. yeah, there used to be a requirement to have to do a steep dive, you know, and then the glider would have to recover. And I think it was the 90 meter, you know, it was a little glider, and I drove this thing, and I rolled that thing over and got it straight down, and I watched the video afterwards, and he was like, oh, like, you know, making all kinds of, he was, I think, scared, but.
Well, he'd never seen it in that attitude before, I'm sure, so it was a little disconcerting for him. But speaking of the 9 meter, Jean-Michel saw very early on the importance of making a glider the right size for the females that would be ultimately entering the sport, because, you know, we're male dominant. We have been a male dominated sport, and Jean-Michel really saw that what the sport needed was more women flying, and in order to get more women flying, you'd have to have gliders that were suitable for them, and he really put a lot of energy into that, and it's no surprise that they still fly so well.
Is there anybody in the audience that has a 9 meter? The small one that still flies that? That must have worked.
Yes, let the record show that we had a hand raised.
My wife's first glider was a 9 meter.
Yeah.
A pink and green or something like
And
that.
by the way, I watched Dave fly this thing.
Yeah.
Scott Dale, that was a 9 meter.
Yeah, and not just the women.
Yeah, well, I learned to fly when I was in 7th grade, and you know my shoulders were a lot narrower. Back then, it was hard. Like when you mount the down tubes on the outside of your keel, it makes it wide, so you can't get the base tube very far off the ground. So I was talking to him one day, and I said it'd be really nice if you could put the down tubes beneath the keel. So he made that apex reducer that moves your control bar from this wide down to underneath. So for a small person, you can lift the base tube off the ground farther.
Yeah.
There was a 10 meter on the hill this weekend. Black leading edges, orange undersurface, and that's the hard underneath it. That was that's the apex of that.
That was for smaller people.
Yeah, you can lift the bar 3 inches off the ground or even more just by bringing it in like that.
Yeah, glider I completely forgot about that he made, that when I sold them, I only sold them to women for some reason, but it was the Genesis.
Yes, the Genesis. Yeah.
Was it only made in the small size?
It was only one size.
Yeah,
The Genesis
that's right.
was one size. Yeah.
Yeah, it had a very small program.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, I remember. He made that one glider model just for women, basically.
Yeah, and he was again. He was very proud of the take-up of that design by women. Some of the first women's fly-ins that were being held. He was a big sponsor of that and a big supporter of that. So again, he gets a lot of credit for that early innovation and focus on that segment. Yeah.
That glider that we set up over the parking lot was one-off, specifically for a female
Yeah,
compound.
Vision 3.
Yeah, George called Jean-Michel. We got this glider, didn't know where it was. So he called Jean-Michel, and he remembered the specific.
You remember the glider colors and everything? Sitting up in the parking lot.
It's
over at
all
Gresham.
orange, top surface,
all
with black.
And then it's like 140.
Yeah, with the swiveling tips too on it,
Which have come back.
which is a big innovation these days. Yeah.
When Jean-Michel designed the poles, he told me he started with the Magic 3 tip. And I can't do it with the proper accent. It was a beautiful tip. It was a gorgeous tip. And this is what I wanted to start with, this tip and everything. And if you fly a pulse and you look down at your shadow now, you see the magics on the tips. And you just kind of see it there. He was so excited by that.
Well, he was never. He didn't ignore innovations that he could bring into the design. He was.
Just because it wasn't his idea.
Yeah, just because it wasn't his idea, he wasn't so proud that he wouldn't incorporate some segment of that, and did a very good job of bringing that in. And again, speaking to just where he saw the industry needed a product, the Double Vision. That was the tandem glider. Double Vision was really the result of the industry, the dealers that he was selling all these visions to, saying we need a good tandem glider, because at the time they had the Dream, but the 220, and it had limitations, and the performance was one of those areas where he really saw he could bring some new innovation in, and that glider set the stage for the Double Vision, the V2, right? It's a Double Vision and a V2, and you know, again, some of those gliders are still out there,
Well, that
very
car is
reliably
still,
flying.
yeah, it's still being produced by Northland, they just call it the T2.
Yeah.
It's a double vision deal.
Right.
Same thing.
So something that, and I think this statement is absolutely true, and I'll represent it as being true. I don't think Jean-Michel designed a single glider that didn't have rear pullback. And for those who've been around long enough, this whole thing of putting your foot in a string and pulling the crossbar back and trying to get a pivot pin in and all that, boy, when the rear pullback came in, it was as simple as done.
Actually, Jean-Michel would represent it as this. It's as simple as schlock. That was a very technical term that he would use, schlock.
Yeah.
And that represents the sound that it makes and the function that it does.
Okay.
Schlock.
Well, I don't
So
know.
there you go. Add that to your vocabulary.
I don't remember where it was, but I mean, it sets up quite a bit faster. And I remember you had like a contest with Rob Hills one time, so you could set up the glider faster.
Yeah.
And you beat him by a lot.
I beat him by a lot, and I mean,
Because it's
we
so
used to set up a lot of gliders. When we'd be out doing demos, you know, it was set up, break down, set up, break down. And, yeah, one time at 11, Rob and I.
Is that where it was? I don't
Yeah,
know.
it was at 11. Yeah.
There was an ad in the magazine, I remember, that it was for one of your gliders, and it was, you want to glide with this, you want to glide with this, you want to glide that's all set up while your friends are still stuffing patents with their feet.
Yeah. Yeah, we weren't afraid to go there.
That's when curved tips were so hard to put in. You had to put your foot on the spring that it was a double string. You had to push with your foot and pull with your hand to put the tip on.
Yeah.
That's why that makes sense. Stuffing ribs.
Yeah. Yeah, he brought a lot to the sport. And his legacies, his children, and you know, all the pilots and schools who have done so well with that product over the years, and Cameron Levins at North Wing is still he stayed in very close touch with Cameron, I know,
Yeah.
and worked a lot with him.
Cameron actually uses his Jean-Michel, the design system that Jean-Michel developed for the Mac, Cameron still uses for designing gliders as well. All the CAD drawings that are on the Jean-Michel program.
Yeah.
So one of his late life passions was, what do you call that kind of motorcycling?
Touring.
Motorcycle touring. Not like on a Harley, like on a BMW or a touring type motorcycle. And this is a good tale we should all learn from, is not to put things off. I was talking to him about some of the pictures he was posting on Facebook in France of where he was touring at. And I'm a Tour de France. That's one of the only sports I like, is watching Tour de France on TV. And that I can't pronounce it, but when I see it I know it, but it's the stage where they go up that mountain where it goes above the tree line, and and I told him, I said, man, I want to ride a motorcycle up that. I don't want to ride a bicycle, but I want to ride a motorcycle. He goes, okay, we'll do it. You come over and we'll do it. And I said, okay, we're going to do it. And it's one of those things you put off, and things happen, and you know, he didn't die of old age. He had I guess it was a brain aneurysm. What happened? Something vascular.
I thought it was hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, he certainly didn't die of old age.
No. He lived very, very full life, but taken too soon. But yeah, his motorcycle group that he got into in the Monterey Bay area told some very funny stories about him at his remembrance, and one of them was something to the effect, and I won't do it justice, but that he didn't quite understand or get the whole idea of when everybody's pulling to the side, that everybody pulls to the side, because he'd see everybody pulling to the side, and he thought they were opening a passing lane for him, and he'd just tear off out and get on by them or something. So it took him a while maybe to get the hang of that whole routine, but they loved him, and it was really, really nice to see them represented there. So.
If you ever want to have an experience in the car, get in a car with Jean-Michel, because there's the north lane, the south lane, and Jean-Michel's lane.
Yeah.
And he would set a record to get from Salinas to Bay Surrey, and to this day is still unmatched.
My mom actually told quite a story because she needed to ride to San Jose Airport one time, and Jean-Michel, I don't think he had any cause to go, but my mom was late, and he volunteered for it because I think he got so much joy out of just having that urgent mission. And my mother tells his story like, yeah, we started passing all these vehicles left, right, center, and she was a little nervous at first because Jean-Michel was kind of talking like this, you know, talking like this to her, and she finally realized that he's a very good driver, and so she wasn't nervous for about 15 minutes, but quite a ride for that first 15.
Everybody else on the road was nervous.
Well, yeah, well, as soon as he was by them, they were nervous. Yeah. And he made it think that's much of a pass. Yeah. Yeah, he was very much the Frenchman, and enjoyed his time here in the States, and Paul, I think, had a nice little, from the Pico meet, come on, two things, yeah.
Anybody here familiar with the Pico Meat movie? It's a really, really, really good movie. I have it here with me. But he's featured in there when he was a really new competition pilot. And, at one point he's interviewed and they asked him does he have to gain from being in this meet? And he goes, I think we will get some money, but I will get a hang glider in my own colors. I guess that was a prize. And then at some point in the movie, somebody's walking by with a hang glider and he goes, watch out your head. And we say that, we don't even know we're saying it at Ellenville. It's stuck in Ellenville, and so we all say, watch out your head. And if you watch the movie, you'll catch those two moments and you'll know who it was.
That's awesome.
And he looks like he's about 12 in that movie. I mean, he was definitely a really young guy.
So one of the things that he did that is kind of forgotten, but he priced his entry-level hang gliders at a margin that nobody has done since. And being in the hang gliding business is not an easy business. And he made the largest margins. He made it so that the hang gliding schools made the largest margins specifically on Mark IVs. I remember we sold in San Diego so many Mark IVs. They were everywhere. And it made it so that when he gave you that kind of margin, you could do a lot with the margin. You could finance stuff for people. You know, you get a certain amount down, which covered your cost back to Jean-Michel, and you could finance it. You could make it so that more people could get into hang gliding. It gave you lots of options. And then I remember he had a price increase, and it was a pretty significant price increase on the Mark IV. And I was talking to him about it, and I said, so why such a big price increase? He said, well, I actually did an audit, and I saw how much I spent on each glider, and I was losing, and he told me how many dollars he was losing on every glider. And they looked at me and I go, but I made it up lying.
Well, I think he really saw the value of the schools for the sport and the growth of the sport, and he really appreciated that, them as an entity out there working so hard to create students and you know, again, just having the gliders out there and flying and having them doing so well was, again, part of his pride of being involved with it. So it was really almost, I'm sure he'd look back on it and say it was his gift.
Yeah. How many people here are flown a pulse? Anyone not flown a pulse? 2 guys.
And if you wonder, like, when you're flying the Pulse, why the bar is way out here, because that's where Jean-Michel liked it. It's how he liked to fly. Out here. Gliders for
Yeah. Yeah, there was a little bit of Jean-Michel in every one of the gliders he made. I mean, he just really brought his personality into it, and you know, he personalized them all with that. It's really great.
Didn't he do tandems in Chamonix in the beginning?
Yes.
Does anybody know anything about that? I just remember him telling me about it, but I don't remember any stories.
the one thing, he talked to me about it one time, and one of the things he told me about the glider they had there, he was thinking about